Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your presence known. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your presence known. About the 14 and in the 15, I make your presence known. About the 14 and in the 15, I make your presence known. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your presence known. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your presence known. I make my down and I'm on the island, I make a restless soul. I make my down and I'm on the island, I make a restless soul. Stupid Gary, let's shame mommy, go go marry, go one gold ring, stupid gold ring, stupid lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make a restless soul. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make a restless soul. This make a present, I make a present, this make a present soul. This make a present, I make a present, this make a present soul. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your present soul. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your present soul. He make a present, she make a present, you make a present soul. He make a present, she make a present, you make a present more. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your present soul. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your present soul. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, present soul. Stupid gal, lily 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 gal, will make your present soul. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your present soul. From out the 14 and into 15, I make a present soul. From out the 14 and into 15, I make a present soul. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your present soul. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your present soul. I make money down and I'm out on the island, I make a present soul. I make money.
Hi, dear. Pleasant good afternoon to everyone. Today is Saturday, November 11th in the year 2023. I want to welcome everyone this afternoon to Over to You. I almost said straight up. No, this is not straight up. This is Over to You. Welcome to Over to You. As usual, I am your host, Wayne Caesar. I hope all of you, all the listeners and viewers, you guys are doing well. I know it's the weekend. I just want to really thank you guys for opening up your homes and allowing us to come into your homes live this evening. We are going to spend 1 hour and we're going to rock and roll and we're going to talk all things politics. We're going to try to summarize the week amongst other things. I do have a guest this afternoon, and my guest is no other but the Honorable Mr. Mark Anthony Benchop, and he will be with us shortly. In the meantime, we continue to fight. We continue to fight for equality across Guyana, equality for all Guyanese, not just some. We continue to honor our motto of one people, one nation, one destiny, and we are not looking at anything that says one Guyana. Okay, we do not believe in one Guyana here. We believe in one people, one nation, one destiny. Under the flagship of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, which is our nation. All of it 183,000 square miles belongs to us, and we will not give away an inch to anyone. We know that there's been people who have been trying to, negotiate with Venezuela to share part of our maritime space. And listen, no one could negotiate with anyone without getting the permission of the people of Guyana. I just want to reiterate, and even though the government is installed, for them to get an understanding that they are actually working for the people of Guyana. They're not the bosses. The people of Guyana are the bosses. And I'm going to say this, I am certain, 100% certain, that the people of Guyana, come 2025, is going to remind this installed regime that they are actually boss and vote them out. So we're going to wait and see. We're going to be here all the way from now, all the way through elections. We're going to be right here. We're going to be right here fighting the fight. So again, I want to welcome everyone. You know, we are on the back of another atrocious bonus being issued out by this installed regime. We know that our economy would have grown. It's the fastest growing economy. That's old news now. We all know this. The economy may have grown 3-4 times the size of what it was when the APNU plus AFC held the power in Guyana, right? So if our economy would have grown so much, why is it that salaries are not growing with the economy? Why is it that we do not see, salaries moving, directly with inflation? Instead of that, we have an inverse between salaries and inflation, where you find that inflation is going up and salaries are remaining the same, which essentially means if I'm going up this way, this thing is staying the same. Yes, but it's going down still. So we need to change these things. And one of the things that I'm going to discuss, myself and Mark, on this program, we're going to let Guyanese have, understand that they have rights and they need to execute those rights. But before I even get to that, Mr. Benchop, thank you for joining the program. Good afternoon. I hope that you are keeping and doing very well, both yourself and family.
Thank you.
You're very short this afternoon. All right.
Yes, there's a reason why I'm very short. There's a need to be short. That I'm a little bit disappointed that I'm looking at your viewers, because this is your show, and I appreciate that you've extended an invitation to me, even though I said to you that my voice, I'm still trying to recover from my voice. I haven't seen Keith Beresford share the link. Deborah Clark hasn't shared the link. Dennis Atwell never shares the link, but he's always here with us. Sandra Hanover has not shared the link. Brenda Braithwaite has not shared the link. And so until all of these folks share the link, I have nothing to say. Absolutely nothing to say. They've got to share
Okay.
the link.
Okay. On that note, I'm going to ask all of our listeners and viewers who are live with us right now to please go ahead and share the link and also like the program. I thank you so very much for doing so, because I know each and every one of them will do so. And to Mr. Keith Beresford, a pleasant good evening to you, sir. And good evening again to all our listeners and viewers. Mr. Benchop, just to get started, I understand that the United States will be sending a delegation to Guyana that will be landing in Guyana on Monday, the 13th of November. Can you please elaborate how much do you know about this trip that this delegation would be making?
All right, I've noticed that folks are saying that they have shared the link, and we are very thankful for that. Just so you guys know that on this show, over to you, I'm just a mere guest on the show. And someone is indicating to us that for a long time now that the link was not visible. So I'm not sure about that. It is something that we'll have to look into. With regards to your question, and just before your question, I wish to say good night to all, or good afternoon to all of your listeners, whether they're in Guyana or wherever they are. It's always a pleasure, and, and I know that Wayne is very thankful that you guys have taken the time out to tune in as well. Uh, Pertaining to your question and concerning the visit, let me just say, according to this press release coming out of the organization, those who have put this together, it was something that was planned months and months ago, and it is very important that these dignitaries, some of them are elected officials, they are incumbent, and some of them are former elected officials who still play a major role in their specific states. Um, According to this press release, they are not going to Guyana, and I wish to make this abundantly clear based on what they have said in their press release, that they are not going to Guyana as an official team on behalf of the US government. And so, just to make that lucidly clear, they are not going to Guyana on this trip as an official team on behalf of the US government. They're not. They are elected officials and former elected officials. They are activists. They are, some of them are community leaders who have been hearing the cries and the concerns of Guyanese in their areas, and they have responded to the call from Guyanese back home, who have decided to reach out to these individuals to say, look, we have some serious problems in Guyana of racial discrimination, political victimization, political persecution, and so forth and so on. Despite the fact that the installed PPP regime has been trying to cover things up and saying to some officials, whether in Washington, D.C., or wherever else, that that is not true. That is what they are saying. Air finale, they're saying that that is not true. But we have a preponderance of evidence to prove that what we, meaning you, meaning others, including all of our friends and folks on social media who have been highlighting the discrimination, acts of discrimination by the PPP regime. So no matter what the PPP says, we have the evidence to prove that there are racial discrimination in Guyana, political discrimination, political persecution, you name it, across the board. And so this team, comprising, as indicated by that press release, some serving members of the US government in their district, in their states, they will be in Guyana. Again, they will be in Guyana in a few days, and it is headed by Dawkins, Miss Dr. Dawkins Hagler. She will be leading that team to Guyana. She will be meeting with groups in Guyana. She will be meeting the team that is, will be meeting with organizations in Guyana. They have extended an invitation to the opposition leader, to opposition members of parliament. They have extended an invitation to the leader of the AFC and others. From my understanding, they will be going into certain villages to meet and talk directly with persons who are victims of the PPP regime, racial policies, vindictive policies, and so forth. So, this trip by these officials is very important. And I wish for your audience to know, Mr. Caesar, that they got a response, again, based on the press release. And we can only talk directly from the press release that is issued by this organization. We cannot speak about any other release that has been tampered with. This is a press release that came directly from the visiting team that will be in Guyana shortly. The understanding is that they got a response from the installed PPP regime denying, stating that there is no need for this team to be in Guyana because there is no discrimination. That is what they say. Over to you, Wayne.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was well put. And you know what makes me so happy is to know that this team is going to be engaging the normal everyday Guyanese directly. And I know that we're not purview to all the information as to exactly where they will be visiting and meeting with people. And I will not ask you that question because that does not need to be out there right now. I don't believe so. So let them do their work. And when the work is finished, then we will get all the results. Mark, thank you so very much. And this is a good thing for the Guyanese people and whichever villages these delegates are going to be visiting. Please, people, come out and let your voices be heard. Because you know, Mark, the PPPC would have used their propaganda apparatus to push out there to the rest of the world that there's no victimization, there's no discrimination, there is no oppression, there is absolutely nothing happening in Guyana. Everything is good and fine. And Mark, I think they're going to also be looking into education a bit also.
Well, there's nothing specific. They will be looking at discrimination across the board. There has been a plethora of complaints against the installed PPP regime. And again, I wish to reiterate that this group that is heading to Guyana, they are not going to Guyana on behalf of the US government. And they have made that elusively clear that they are not going on behalf of the US government. This is not a fact finding mission on behalf of the US government. However, what they will do, since some of them are elected officials, they will be reporting back to the various agencies. They will be reporting to the White House. They will submit a report of their findings to the White House and other, for example, other agencies based on what they are saying in there or what they have highlighted in their press release. Off the bat, they are saying, look, and I'm getting to the part of that press release, they are saying that, as stated in a previous press statement, on Thursday, October 26th, the delegation they're saying, which is led by the Honorable D. Dawkins Hagler and co-led by Representative John King of South Carolina, is concerned about allegations of discrimination towards certain ethnic groups as well as Guyanese American citizens currently residing in Guyana. They have also said, Mr. Caesar, and I quote, "It is important to note that all allegations have been vehemently denied by Irfan Ali and the PPP regime, who have provided," and this is what they're saying, that Irfan Ali and his regime, members of his regime, have provided numerous reports, documents, and articles to counter the claim. Irfan Ali further purports that the allegations have no merit and are fueled with lies by disgruntled individuals who are trying to create chaos. Again, that is according to the release. We know that they exist lots and lots of evidence of racial discrimination, political discrimination. We saw what happened to the people in Mokok. We saw what happened to that young woman, that lady that was actually brutalized, disrespected. We saw that dozens of individuals in Mocha have had their lands and their properties and their businesses bulldozed. They were bullied by this corrupt PPP regime so that their lands can be confiscated by the state unjustly. A lot of those people have had those held, occupy that land or those lands for decades. A lot of those people have had those lands handed down through ancestral means. They have disrespected, they have disregarded those rights of the people, and that is here finale. We saw what happened to the people in Linden who have had their homes bulldozed as well, their farmlands bulldozed as well. We see the constant and the daily discrimination, mainly against persons of African descent. We see that the contracts, the billions of dollars of contracts that are awarded to friends and cronies of the PPP regime. Occasionally, when they hand one person of African descent a contract, for the most part, that individual or those individuals, few of them, are basically tokens. They are connected to the PPP regime and they have no experience in contracts. For example, the school in Linden was awarded to a couple of or two persons of African descent who are connected to the PPP and who do basically baggage work for the PPP in Linden. The evidence is quite clear that $300 million spent on that contract, and today the school cannot be completed, not even 95% completed. We see the discrimination where billions of dollars being given to the sugar workers and nothing is given to the bauxite industry. We see the racial discrimination where credit unions are being hijacked and dismantled by the PPP regime. All of these things and more, the evidence is quite clear. So, regardless of what Irfan and his cronies would like to say in order to debunk these allegations and to basically say that it is being peddled by a few disgruntled individuals who are trying to create chaos. The PPP is the one, Irfan Ali and his thugs are the ones who are creating chaos in the country. They have created chaos from day one and they continue to do so. So, in our capacity as talk show host or whatever, activist, whether social or political activist, legitimate political and social activists who have been exposing the corruption of this PPP regime for a while now, uh, there's nothing that Irfan Ali and his regime can say to counter these serious allegations against the PPP regime. We have not just allegations, but facts that persons have been persecuted. We have Roxanne Myers, we have Keith Lowenfield, we have Mr. Mingo, we have Trevor Ben, and others who are being persecuted by the PPP regime, who have friends in the DPP chambers and friends in the judicial system to hijack them to persecute these individuals. For 3 years now, Roxanne Myers and others are being persecuted. There is no evidence against them, nothing. But the case is still ongoing, basically hijacking the lives of these individuals who cannot work, and in some cases, they cannot travel. Just recently, Mr. Trevor Ben appeared in court. I believe it was either Wednesday or Thursday. The matter should have been concluded. The magistrate requested a letter from the former president saying that he instructed, meaning David Granger, as president, instructed that Trevor Ben dispose of whatever land situation. A letter was asked for by the magistrate. It was provided. Former President David Granger provided that letter saying he instructed Trevor Ben. And based on the fact that he, David Granger, as president, instructed Trevor Ben to dispose of certain lands, the matter should have been completed, dismissed right there and then. But because of political persecution, because of vindictiveness towards Trevor Ben and what Trevor has done to overhaul the entire Lands and Survey Agency, to modernize it, to give everyone an equal playing field. They didn't like that. And unfortunately, they continue to persecute and be vindictive towards Trevor Ben. All of these things, Mr. Caesar, we have as evidence to present to this visiting team that they are serious racial, political, and economic discrimination against mainly persons of African descent. When we go outside of persecuting people because of their ethnicity and their political association, we have examples also, not just of African Guyanese being persecuted and being victimized and discriminated against. We have some of our Indian brothers and sisters and indigenous who are facing the same discrimination and vindictiveness from the PVP regime. We have the Aziz family. We have others can attest to this fact. And so when this visiting team gets to Guyana, when they arrive in Guyana, they will unearth even more evidence about racial discrimination. And so, without saying anything else, I wish to, because it is your show, sorry, I got a bit carried away there.
No, 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 no. Thank you, Mark. That that was an overwhelming preponderance of evidence there. I don't think nothing else needs to be said there, Mr. Benchop. Thank you very much for
And, and,
discriminating. Go ahead.
Mr. Caesar, I know usually when they're guests on my show, I don't allow them to take advantage of me on my show, but I'm sorry that I'm trying to.
No, no,
But
no, no, no.
I want to say something that is, you know, heartbreaking. I heard yesterday that we who remember the Henry boys that were murdered. One of the boys' mother died a few months ago, and then yesterday another boy, one of the boys that was killed, his mother died yesterday too. So both mothers have died, both mothers. And so to the Henry boys family, this is heart-rending, and our condolences to the mother of the Henry boys, one of the Henry boys that died. So both of their mothers have passed away, and they have not gotten justice. I would love for the Henry boys' relatives now to speak directly to this visiting team to talk about the racial discrimination, the vindictiveness towards the family. And even though Irfan Ali attended the funeral services of those two young men who were murdered, and people are still, majority of Guyanese are still of the view that they were murdered by a political operative of the PPP, a so-called big businessman who is connected to the PPP regime. And at the funeral services of those two young men, the Henry boys who were killed, Irfan Ali shout out, all because the camera was there, that he would leave no stone unturned. It is over 2+ years now, and we're still waiting for the stone. We're still waiting to the stone to be moved by Irfan Ali. It was just a political gimmick. I would love again, just to repeat, that these members of the family, Henry Boy's family, to sit down and speak with these visiting uh, members of the various agencies that they represent. Also, I noticed there's a comment that the Oren Boston family, they're
Yes,
still awaiting justice. They're
yes,
not getting justice at all. And so this is not a case where we spread propaganda or we are trying to create chaos. We want fairness. We want justice. We want equal rights and justice for all Guyanese. And then we have the Quinton Bacchus. They're
yes,
still waiting for justice. Had it not been for the same set of people that Paku Irfanali said is trying to create chaos, had it not been for these very folks that he's talking about creating chaos, the police would have put all of these matters under the rug, including the Oren Boston situation. Oren Boston, who was murdered by a member of the Guyana police force. God knows that that little rank probably took the rap for a senior rank. And then we have Quindon Bacchus, who was murdered by a member of the Guyana police force. Had it not been for these very people that he believes are Irfan Ali
says that we are creating chaos. Had it not been for us, it would not have been reached to the point where policemen have been charged. A policeman has been charged for the murder of um, Oren, sorry,
Quindam Bacchus, and Mark, that being said, there were other officers who were there who were also involved in that murder of Quindam Bacchus. And that one officer, has been charged. But there are other officers that were there who should be charged. And that
absolutely.
matter would be needed to be looked into a little further. And also, Mark, let's not forget Peter Headley, who was
Yep.
also brutally murdered.
And
So
the thing about Peter,
string.
the thing
And we
about
could go on. We could go all the way to Courtney Crum Ewing. We
the
can go
thing,
to Ronald Waddle also.
the thing about Peter Headley, he was robbed by members of the Guyana police force. He was placed in the front of the car, and while he was driving, a policeman was on the passenger side, or he was on the passenger side, something, and a policeman shot him from behind. They murdered him. The family of Peter Headley, they're still awaiting justice. We see an imbalance of the justice scale in Guyana. And oftentimes it favors people who are connected to the PPP regime. You have a guy who was sitting there as a minister who was accused of raping and buggery and all manner of things. We saw evidence of corruption, starting with the commander of that division, going all the way to Irfan, to Jack Deere, to the DPP, and all of these people, all of them. So I don't know what chaos Irfan Ali is talking about that people are attempting to create. And that is why, Mr. Caesar, I am glad and I'm certain that majority, 99% of the people who are watching your program right now are pleased that this visiting team from the US are going there on a fact-finding mission, an independent fact-finding mission, and on conclusion of their visit, they will present their evidence to the White House and other relevant agencies. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just a bit here. I just wanna, further elaborate on this $25,000 bonus that would have been given out to public servants, Mark. We are at the time of the year where it's the holiday season, Mark, and it's been over 2 years that public servants have not gotten, any type of raise. We know that since the coalition would have left power in 2020, the economy would have grown 3 to 4 times. Why is it, Mr. Benchap, that we are not seeing a trickle down effect to the people of Guyana? Why is it that salaries are remaining the same? We're dealing with inflation, plus we're dealing with the aftermath of COVID. COVID kind of brought the world to its knees a little bit. Things stopped moving economically. It has since receded and things are moving along now, but we see that people are stuck on the same old salaries and are totally unable to, take care of their families because their income is inadequate. Your take, sir.
$25,000 is just not even a drop in the bucket. It's just one or two drinks for some of these pacus in the PPP at the Marriott or that infamous Palm Court den. It's just a political gimmick where they're trying to basically hoodwink ordinary rank people into believing that 25,000, whilst 25,000 might mean a heck of a lot for some folks, it amounts to nothing compared to the billions of dollars that is wasted. Take, for example, they cannot go to sugar harvesters, cane cutters, folks in Gaisuko, and give them $25,000. They went to the folks at Gaisuko and gave them $250,000. But the $25,000 for public servants, when we take a look at what ethnic group comprises the majority of public servants. And so it is an impasse. It has always been an impasse that they believe that they could throw pittance to the public servants. The public servants that they have no respect for. As soon as they got installed as of August 2nd, 2020, what was some of the first things? What was one of the first things that actually they did? You know what? They fired over 4,000 public servants. They sent those public servants on the bread line. Then, not so long after, they started with their cash grants. And this is something that I want the visiting team from the US to understand also, because they will be meeting with a variety of persons who are victims. They will be hearing directly from individuals. And so when we take our people, our listeners back, when we take our listeners back to the COVID cash grants, if Irfan Ali is talking about there is no discrimination, there is no evidence of discrimination, and people like us are only trying to create chaos, then what about the COVID cash grant, where thousands of persons have been bypassed, where thousands of persons have been lied to, where they walk into certain villages because the villages are predominantly East Indian Guyanese. They went there and they presume everybody happens to be PPP, so they gave out the cash grants. But when they reach predominantly African villages and communities, they gave out just a handful of cash grants, but a majority of pink slips. They have promised those individuals that they will return. It is over 2 years now, and the people's pink slips probably changed into another color now, another form of discrimination. And the point that I'm making, they feel that they can hoodwink people, certain ethnic group, into believing that 25,000, they're not going past 25,000, 10,000, and so forth. It is always 25,000. They do not believe that public servants should be given a raise, a salary increase. They only believe in these crumbs and pittances and handouts. 25,000 now. So coming to Christmas time, all the public servants are going to prostrate towards the PPP and say, hey, you guys did a good job. Oh, we love you guys. But people are not stupid. People are not pacos. They see right through the racist and the corrupt PPP regime that they do not respect the public servants. Give the public servants a reasonable salary increase. They don't want every year end some sort of political gimmick to be getting cash grants, or bonus 25,000. And when you take taxes off of that, you left with what, 15 or 16,000. Then when you go to buy a bag of rice and a bag of sugar, money done. There's no oil, there's nothing to cook with. It's done. Who are these people fooling? Billions of dollars they're giving into the sugar industry. And majority of the billions of dollars going into the cronies, the acting CEO, for over 3 years now. They cannot confirm the CEO there, who is a waste of time, by the name of Sais Narayan, turnaround expert Singh. He got 2 gardeners, he got 2 cooks. He makes over $2-3 million per month. So those people at Gaisuko are welfare recipients, sucking the blood and running on the backs of hardworking Guyanese people, but yet they want to go and give crumbs to civil servants to the amount of $25,000. And 1 second, they ignore other public servants, such as those workers at GPL, those contract workers at GPL. They ignore all of those guys. But yet, the management of GPL, the failure, those incompetent managers at GPL who are connected to Anil and Irfan and Jack, these people, they get bonuses. But the ordinary workers at GPL, guess what? They get nothing, not even the 25%, the $25,000. Absolutely nothing they get. The bauxite workers, they get nothing. But watch what they're going to do to GAU coming soon. The PPP, because GAU is a union that is connected to the PPP, they're going to give all of the sugar workers an increase plus bonuses over 250,000 Guyana dollars plus billions of dollars into the sugar industry and nothing but crumbs to others.
Thank you so much, Mark. Well said. Very, very well said. Listen, in my opinion, Mark, I think it's high time that public servants get a 30% increase, and that should have been happening this year. And next year you can give them a follow-up 20% increase. That would give them, in a 2-year span, a 50% increase on salaries. I feel like if they make so little, and they have to put out so much, and our nurses and teachers, they have been exceptional. We see at the CSEC exam, amongst other exams, that the children are performing very, very well. But what happened, there's not a robust and there's not a proper support mechanism in place, Mark, to put us over the top when it comes to being successful. We have our children still going to school, Mark, hungry and these type of things in an oil-rich country. Our teachers, they're not making much. But I've spoken to a lot of teachers. When I tell you a lot of teachers, Mark, and they would tell me, hey, Wayne, sometimes I have to buy lunch for some of my students because they are good students and I want them to learn and they come here hungry. Sometimes I have to buy supplies for the class myself in order to be able to teach the children. And when you're going to pay teachers next to nothing, it's a disgrace. It's disgraceful. Our nurses now, they come in, they work. A lot of them are forced to work overtime. We know the conditions at the Georgetown Public Hospital is totally atrocious, and this is purposely being done so that they can eventually, in my opinion, purposely being done so that they can eventually shut that place down and privatize that entire industry. But Guyanese, I call on you guys again to stand against that. You cannot afford the health system to be privatized. You guys are going to suffer. You're not going to be able to save your families when they're sick, and you take them to these private institutions and they call for certain monies and you don't have it. Your family will not be looked at. And if they're looked at, they will not be looked at properly. So you need to make sure that you have a public institution up and running. And this is something I call on the new government, because I expect the new government, Mark, in 2025 to one of the first things is to take a look at our health system, our public health system. Now, Mark, I'm going to ask you this question. We have seen, and I don't know if you would have seen it, but I would have seen a Peace in the Village voice that would have called for the Congress to be held, the PNC to hold their Congress just about immediately. They're calling for it to be held at the end of the year. If not the end of the year, definitely early next year. Some people are saying that there should be no Congress until after the election. I mean, you are an activist. There's no stone that you haven't turned over. I want your take on this. What's your take? What do you think?
Well, I've said it before. Anyone who suggests that, and let me just make it clear that I speak from a standpoint of an avid supporter of democracy and the principles. I'm not speaking on behalf of the PNC. I'm not a member of the PNC. I'm sympathetic towards supporters of the PNC. And as I'm sympathetic towards Guyanese in general. But in response to your question, I have responded to this question here before that any party that is democratic, as I'd like to believe that the People's National Congress Reform is a democratic party. They have a fair system, they have a democratic system where they open their leadership challenges for debate. It might be robust, it might be a fight, but that is democracy. Barring personal insults and so forth, it is democracy. And democracy in the PNC is healthy. We want to ensure that democracy continues to be healthy and that there's no sore or there's no exposed wound that would cause the PNC to bleed, as the PPP is doing right now. The PPP does not believe in democracy from within or even without. There hasn't been an elections to elect a leader of the PPP since 2016. I hope that the People's National Congress reform wouldn't want the same to be painted with the same undemocratic brush as the PPP. And so, in order to continue in the area of consistency and with respect to democracy and so forth, their internal elections to elect a new leader should be held at a time that it is constitutionally due. There is no pandemic, there's nothing preventing that at all. And if the current leader, Mr. Aubrey Norton, and his supporters are confident that no one else stands a chance in beating him, absolutely no one, then the elections should take place. There is nothing stopping them from holding the elections. Anybody who says that elections to elect a new leader, or in the case to vote so that this current leader can remain there, whatever their choices are, the elections, the Congress should be held way before 2025 general and regional elections, so that whoever that person is, whether it is going to remain Mr. Aubrey Norton or whomever, I don't know, so that that person can be properly prepared. They have 1+ years to prepare, to start the campaign, and to rally their troops, all of their troops, where everyone will put aside their differences. So let us say, for example, elections are to be held January of 2024 for a leader or new leader of the PNC, and Mr. Aubrey Norton is re-elected. I want to make it abundantly clear right here, right now, that support, I will support fully the leadership of the People's National Congress and any coalition leading up to the next elections. If there are question marks going into the next elections, then there will be a lot of red flags, lots and lots of red flags that will prevent people from even wanting to support them. So the elections for Congress or Congress should be held. Get that over with right now. And people are not stupid. Voters are not dotish. Here's why voters are not dotish. They know who are for them and who aren't for them. Voters are not concerned about people who just drop out of the sky overnight and see this as a fashion show and just wants to be a presidential candidate or a leader of a party without having any evidence of any sort of substantial work done on behalf of the people. Politics is not a fashion show, at least not in Guyana, and should not be treated as a fashion show or where individuals just rush out, distribute 2 hampers, and feel that that is doing something for the people. It is more than that. And so, having said that, again, I say, The PNCR should hold their Congress way before the next general and regional elections, way before. If Aubrey Compton Norton has nothing to be afraid of, and Mr. Norton has said this publicly, his supporters have said this publicly, that there's nothing and there's no one can beat him. Well, if that is the case, Mr. Norton should put that to the test. Nothing is preventing them from holding the party's Congress right now. Absolutely nothing. And when the party's Congress is announced, this station will provide debates amongst all of the candidates, all of the serious-minded candidates, rather, not fashion shows. We're not into fashion business, but all of the serious candidates right here on 107.1 FM. So disregard any Looney Tune who says that Congress for the PNC should be postponed until after elections and all manner of things. Sometimes I wonder, do these people really understand politics? Do they really believe in democracy? Because of the everyday hypocrisy that comes out of the mouths of some of these individuals. Only, as the Rastaman would say, only Jano, only Janos. Over to you, sir.
Well, you see, Mark, you got to understand a lot of these people look over to the PPPC and see that they don't hold any Congress or anything. You just have one man there that demonstrates absolute power.
Just a correction, sir.
Yes.
You said one man there.
Yeah. Please correct me, sir.
One person there.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I stand corrected, Mr. Benshaw. There's one person there who demonstrates absolute power, and he kind of does the same thing when it comes to Guyana from a holistic perspective. And it's just
take a look at this way. They want support. I'm sure I would bet, I get 50 cents in my pocket now. I will bet this 50 cents right now that Kevin Koch, if Kevin Koch could show me his party card, you see, this is the hypocrisy that we see here. Kevin Koch is saying the PNC Congress is to be determined by the party members. No one can impinge on or the party's democratic principles because of missed Congress. Congress was postponed before. You see, what was the reason for Congress being postponed before? Was it during the pandemic? Understandable. But even at that point in time, it had to have been held. What is Kevin Koch suggesting is the reason why Congress should not be held right now? But these are the same folks, assuming that Kevin Koch is a member of the PNC, assuming that he's a card-bearing member, and that he is saying that no one should have a say into the democratic or whatever democratic pathway for the PNC. Everybody else should shut up. Let the PNC take care of their own business. But they don't say that when everybody should shut up. Everybody should ignore the PNC on that aspect. But then again, when they do whatever they want to do inside there, people must just come together and vote for the PNC. They don't tell people shut up then. They don't tell people shut up then. But they want to. And I'm not getting angry at Kevin Koch. Kevin is a regular listener. Kevin is regular, assuming that Kevin is his name and that it's a he. We don't know. And Kevin is, of course, entitled to his or her views. But we can't have it both ways. We can't always try to justify things because it happens to be us. And then the same things the PPP does, the same things the PPP would do, that we're going to criticize the PPP, but we are going to want to find excuses for us. It's just like some people, they're head of their organization for 15, 20, 30 years. And they don't want to give anybody an opportunity to. They don't even have a democratic process in their own organization. But they want to dictate to political groups how democratic they should be and who should this and who should that. Kevin Cook, again, let's agree to disagree. Over to you, Mr. Caesar.
Well said, Mark. And we got to be careful not to have blind loyalty. We have to be objective. We're gonna have leaders that we support, but we cannot support them blindly. We still have to hold their feet to the fire. We still have to hold them accountable. And with that, Mark, I do have another question for you here. And this is concerning kind of like the infighting in the party and what your solution would be. You being a leader and you have a few MPs that you and them are not on the same page. Is it the owning upon you to engage these people and get them to be on the same page, or you all compromise and meet in the middle somewhere? I
You
would
know,
like to know how you would look at something and you would deal with something of that nature, sir.
initially, I wanted to take the fifth on that. And I go back to Kevin Coke now. And on this instance, I do believe, in this situation, I do believe that whatever internal problems they have from a leadership, not a democratic standpoint, that they need to iron out their differences immediately. You cannot be preparing for an elections and then they have all these, based on what we're seeing from the outside, the perception, mind you, of some sort of division. They need to rectify that problem as quickly as possible. All of the people are PNC people, I assume. Some of them are just come, some of them just got a card, their party card 1 year now or 2 years now. You'll swear to God they got it like 20 years or 200 years ago. But nevertheless, they're still members. Um, I think that this faction that we're seeing, this division within the coalition, it is pretty obvious by now. Uh, who is Harman faction, who is Granger faction, who is Corbyn faction? It is nothing new. It has always been there. It has always been there, and Mr. Aubrey Norton knows this since the time that he was general secretary, since the time that he was general secretary of the People's National Congress, um, of the People's National Congress. Sorry, guys. Yeah, yeah, of the People's National Congress, and he would have had his problems as well, that caused him to have been removed as general secretary. Mr. Norton has. There's always been this perception of an in-house fighting. Come on, let me look. Let me help. Yeah, sorry, guys.
Go
There's
ahead, Mark.
always been this. Yeah, here you go, sweetheart. The perception of party disagreement, internal disagreement. Mr. Norton has had those sort of disagreements with almost every leader of the People's National Congress reform. So if there are persons who now have disagreements with legitimate, mind you, disagreements with Mr. Norton, he has to understand that it is also politics, that he himself was in that situation when he wasn't a leader, that he has had disagreements as well. The question is, how do they handle that leading up to an elections? All of them have to be on the same platform, so to speak. Not necessarily 100%. There will always be disagreement. But Mr. Norton has to find ways and means into working along with those people. And they too must have that conviction that they have been selected or elected to work along on behalf of party representatives and not on their own behalf. They are not there to run a fashion show and run out there to suddenly want to be presidential candidate, suddenly think that they could be leader just to just pop out of the jamun tree and want people to just see them as a leader just like that with no track record. At least with Mr. Norton, we know that he has a track record. We know that he has demonstrated in the past. His track record is there. There might be some others who are running for leadership may have that track record. If I were to vote for any leader of the PNC, had I been a member, I would first want to look at the person's track record. Do they have a track record of working for me or on my behalf or the constituency's behalf. Aubrey Norton has a track record of being a fighter, albeit we're not seeing that of recent times. He got into office promising to fight. Claudia Singh will be removed. Then US ambassador will have to go. This will have to, nothing has happened. The US ambassador went off on her own 2 years after. Claudia Singh is still there. There is no protest. Mr. Aubrey Norton is not seen on the protest line in front of GCOM. This is not to say that he has to be there every day. There is no announcement by Mr. Norton or the leadership of the PNC that people should go and protest in front of GCOM. Instead, what we get is the opposite. People should not go out and protest. Excuses upon excuses upon excuses upon excuses. And I think that is where Mr. Aubrey Norton will find himself into some problems, because he promised to do better than the Harman team, who he claims and his supporter claims that were writing letters. And of course, we all claim that. They were writing letters and holding press conferences. People wanted a change. People wanted better. And people expected, based on the promises made by Mr. Aubrey Norton, and again, the track record of Mr. Aubrey Norton as a fighter, even at times on the backs of others, but he is considered to be a fighter. We're not seeing that in Mr. Aubrey Norton. And so when we look for a leader, whether to elect a leader of the party or a presidential candidate, that person must have some evidence of fighting. Putting aside Mr. Aubrey Norton, we need to see the evidence of those who are fighting to become leaders, that they were there. The second person that comes in line that has a track record, in my opinion, is Roysdale Ford. From a judicial standpoint, from working with the party and so forth, in doing a lot of cases pro bono. Outside of that, I don't see anybody else that has anyone else who has that track record. And we must be able to make decisions not out of emotions in electing leaders. We cannot just jump on because we like somebody, because Wayne Caesar looks good, or because Anne Samogan looks good, or because Kevin Koch looks good, assuming that Kevin Koch looks good, or Chandel Griffith looks good. We're going to vote for them because they look good. No. What are some of the things they stand for? Do we know these folks, some of these folks who want to be leaders and presidential candidates? Do we know their family values? Do we know whether we share the same values with them? Do we know whether our pains are their pains? Or some of it is just a facade of them pretending that they understand our pains, pretending that they care about us, and then when they get into office, we are being neglected. We cannot make the same mistakes over and over again. And so running for leadership of the PNC or any political party should not be a style, should not be a fashion show. It is a serious business, because right now, majority of the people of Guyana need help, and they need a strong leader. They need someone who is there, who feels their pains, and who can fight for them. Now, again, I say that Aubrey Norton has a track record of fighting, even with the help of others in the past. But he has that track record. He hasn't been using that track record since he has gotten into office. For the most part, he has not been using that. And so that might work against Mr. Aubrey Norton if you have another person contesting for the leadership who has that track record of fighting and standing up, and that will have what it takes to confront the PPPC regime. Not excuses why people shouldn't go to the streets. Not excuses upon excuses upon excuses. I'm done for now.
Mark, that was a great point. That was well put. And when I look at Aubrey Norton and I look at his body of work, he started all the way at the YSM level and just worked his way right through the party, spent most of his life in the party, basically, worked his way right through to the point where he is.
And he has had problems with the leadership.
Yes, yes,
And
yes,
so
he
the
has.
problem that he is Mr. Aubrey Norton, Aubrey and I are friends. And let me just make this clear. I've noticed some people oftentimes they complain that Aubrey doesn't take Mr. Norton, sorry, give him his respect because of his title, doesn't take their calls. There are times when I message the leader of the opposition and he doesn't respond to me. 4 days, 3 days. I can understand. He has other things to deal with. He has other people. I'm not going to rush and say he's not taking my call and get vexed with him. If it's an emergency, then I will ensure I get his attention. If it's an emergency. But we can't get vexed because the man doesn't return your calls and the man doesn't this. That is getting too personal and too emotional, right? But I say all of this to say that whatever the situation is with regards to these MPs, not having a working relationship, based on the perception, mind you, with Mr. Aubrey Norton. He is now the leader of the party. He should put himself in the shoes where he himself has had problems with the leaders, Mr. Hoyt, Mr. Corbyn, Mr. Granger, and others. He should now say, well, look, how did I feel when I had problems with these leaders who weren't doing what I want them to do? He is now having problems with some of his MPs. He should call a meeting right now with all of them. Invite Dennis Atwell to buy tennis roll for them and all kind of things. And Charlene and all these people. Put them in at Congress Place, all of the MPs, and say, let us trash this thing out right now. We've got to trash it out right now. That's what leaders do. Leaders do not get vexed with their MPs and take things personal and all the, you got to rise above that. I'm not saying that's the case with Mr. Norton. I'm just speaking in general. And so the complaints that, they get some MPs who should not have been there in the first place anyways.
I agree with that.
Right. But Mr. Norton should call all of them to a meeting and say, look, let us trash this out once and for all. So when he goes into meetings and press conferences and so forth, we will see a strong team. Right now, we're not seeing that strong team. We're not. He needs to utilize, when necessary, shadow ministers, whether shadow minister of housing, whether shadow minister of national security, whether shadow minister of legal affairs, but everybody running around doing their own things. And at press conferences, when it is dealing with relevant and important topics, you don't have the relevant persons there. And so it diminishes the value of his press conferences. I've asked Mr. Norton a question. Why is it that we are not seeing former chiefs of staff of the Army? He has two right now at his disposal, Gary Best and Mr. Eddie Collins. Why not utilize them at a press conference? Mr. Norton has his own views. But these are people we need to see, strong people at press conferences. We're not seeing that. They need strong economists. This is not to knock Mr. Elson Lowe. I mean, Elson tries, and as a young man, I don't want to knock him. But Elson is not an economist. We need, again, this is not knocking Elson, but we need strong people there who will be able to guide persons like Mr. Elson Lowe, who will be able to guide the younger MPs and the younger folks in party politics within the coalition. I heard that when Miss Valda Lawrence was eager to return to Parliament, she promised this nation, she promised the supporters of the PNC that she is going to go there to guide and to ensure to guide the young MPs. We hardly hear from Ms. Valda Lawrence. hardly hear. The last time we heard was when she had to attend court and they called supporters to go out because Miss Paula Lawrence and others are going to court today. We need to play the politics right. We need to stop jumping every time there's a noise being made somewhere. The noises are there to distract us. Do not every tinning cup y'all hear knock. Y'all drop us and y'all gone to the tinning cup because the knocking of the tinning cups is a distraction from the real issues at hand. Over to you, sir. Sorry about that.
No, Mark, that was very, very well said. And some of the stuff that you would have just deciphered there, as a normal everyday Guyanese, I would be saying to myself, like the person would have stood up in Parliament and said when they were talking about the duck curry, that everybody's eating the same duck curry. I would believe that everybody's eating the same duck curry the way some people are responding. I mean, when you speak of Valda Lawrence, she's been totally missing in action. Sometimes I even forget that, she's a parliamentarian. We never call her name. We never hold her accountable the way we hold some of the other MPs accountable. I know she's done some great work in the past, but Mark, work done in the past is in the past. We're talking about now. The everyday Guyanese is depending on these individuals to execute on their behalf, and listen, all who want to play that, they are not agreeing with Aubrey Norton and all of that. Listen, I understand the point, and I understand that he may not have agreed with leaders in the past and all of that stuff. But are you guys not thinking about the people that you represent also? It's not just about you. That's why, Mark, I also call on people sometimes to put aside their ego. If Mr. Norton wants to call a conference with all his MPs and speak with them, you need to put aside your ego. You need to have somebody like a Lincoln Lewis in there. That is my opinion. He
Some of
needs to
these
be there.
people,
He
some
needs
of
to be.
these,
Yeah.
some of these people, Mr. Caesar, these MPs, think that they've arrived. They're superstars. Nobody can talk to them. Nobody can advise them. And when you have some MPs who are like that, believe that they're on top of the world and they're better than others now, when just the other day they were begging people for votes, some of them were begging to even become MPs. Now that you've become MPs, do the people's work. Otherwise, I don't want to sit here, Mr. Caesar, and to your listeners as well. I don't want to sit here and knock at certain MPs, but it hurts me to know that people like myself dropped whatever we were doing, went out there, campaigned, did every single thing, and then they are there to work on behalf of the people, and they feel that certain constructive criticisms are an insult to them. It is not. It is to make them better. Unfortunately, some of them are not getting better. We didn't elect MPs, at least I didn't vote for MPs to become Facebook show hosts. I didn't vote for them for that. I didn't vote for them to go around and share out hampers. We voted for them to go into the communities, represent the interest of the people, stand up against the corrupt PPP regime, and all these manner of things. That is why we voted for them. And that is why now people are saying that some of the MPs are not working in favor of Mr. Aubrey Norton. That might be true. I don't know what's the reason behind that. That is why I'm saying Mr. Aubrey Norton, if he's at fault, I'm not saying he is, but if he is sending the wrong signal to some of these MPs, it is time that these things be corrected. It is time. People said also that the list is being controlled by David Arthur Granger, former president. That is true. And even if David Granger is to give up the list today, right now, it wouldn't solve the problem. Because all of those MPs were selected, some of them placed on the top up list, and so forth. They were selected before the elections. And those lists were submitted to GCOM. And based on the order of which they were selected, for for whatever region, they have to be placed in parliament. And I would say this, unfortunately, we have a heck of a lot of members of parliament who should not have been there because for the most part, they do not represent the interest of you, the people. Let us take, for example, and that is what Mr. Aubrey Norton has to work with. A group of MPs, he as leader of the party, he has to work with a group of MPs he didn't choose. And so he has to live with that reality until he has to live with that. And so he has to find ways to work around that. I've noticed he has made some efforts in doing that, and I give him some credit. But there are lots of areas of which he has failed also to rein some of these people in or even to work along with them. Vindictiveness, spitefulness, and emotional politics will not work. I have noticed the AFC, and this is where Dennis Atwell is going to get upset and his bumps is going to raise. I noticed the AFC is heading to Linden, either over the weekend or in coming days. When I saw that flyer that the AFC is heading there, I went down and I prayed. I said, God, where were these people before? Why now they're going into Linden? When you have an MP that is there as a result of votes from the coalition people, PNC people, that MP in Linden has been missing in action. Sears has not been standing up and representing the people's interests in Region 10. You hardly see Sears. But when we talk, you hear that Ben Chap like talk too much or Wayne, like Wayne out bust like them Pleasance people. All manner of emotions and the people bumps raised. Now we can't call our MPs out. Sears is sitting there as a result of people like me and scores of others who voted for them. But yet they do not represent the interests of the people. If I had my way, if the AFC go into Linden, I would say, no, thank you. Not now. Do better for us. Don't come now because it's elections time and you want sweet talk we and you want swar we. What has the MP for Region 10, Mr. Sears, what has he done? What has he done? Other than throwing a little party and a little sport and a little bubble session. What has he done? We've got to be straight up with these people. Over to you, sir.
Yes, and when it comes to Devon Sears, Mr. Ramjitan would need to look into that and make sure that that MP is active on the ground. You know, you can't people go there and they demonstrate their democratic right to put you in place there to represent them, and you need to execute your duties and mandate to the people. And Mark, you're right. I hardly ever hear Devon Sears' name mentioned in anything, any type of activity. You know, I don't really know who the guy is, but he needs to get out there and he needs to be working. He's receiving a salary when the month comes. There's many Guyanese who are suffering who would have voted for you who doesn't even have a job.
No,
You know,
correction.
yeah,
Some of those MPs, some of those ungrateful MPs in the coalition, they're ungrateful. You just said they're receiving a salary.
yes,
They receive close to $300,000 per month, Guyana dollars per month. They said no. Some of them love to say no. That's not a salary. That's a stipend. Where else can most of them go and work and get close to $300,000 per month? Then when they go to cross the Linden Bridge, like ordinary Lindeners and others have to pay to cross. When you go to cross the Borbies Bridge as an MP, they don't have to pay. They don't have to pay to cross the Demerara Harbor Bridge. They don't. They have duty-free concessions and all these different things they have. But yet the $300,000 they're getting, they say is just a stipend. Some of them have jobs. Some of them are teachers. And so their member of parliament position is basically just a side thing, a side hustle for them. So in order for them to be out there to protest on behalf of the people, we can't go out now. We can't go out now. We gotta wait because we got to go to work. Their other job is far more important than the job that pays them the most. Over to you, Mr. Caesar. I noticed Brenda is like, Brenda came out to abuse me today. She's saying, stop correcting Mr. Caesar. He makes sense. Of course, Brenda. Caesar always makes sense. So I wish to give on to Caesar what is due to Caesar. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Mark. And that was a good clarification also. These guys are entitled to so much. You would expect more from them, as far as serving the people. But listen, also, Mark, we have to remember this. In order for the Guyanese people to receive better service from the MPs, the government, you know, the NDCs, we listen, we have to set higher standards. Mark, if you keep receiving next to nothing, it is next to nothing that you're going to get every time around because you continue to accept the same mediocrity. For example, GPL, Mark, they should just suspend people having to pay any light bill for like the last 6 7 weeks because the service, is ridiculous. The service is no good. Same thing with GWI. These services that are provided, Mark, does not match at all what everyday Guyanese have to struggle and pay. You don't pay your water bill, the water get cut off. You don't pay your light, the light get cut off. You know, as a country, we need to move forward. And in order for this country to move forward, in order for Guyana to move forward, we as a people have to set higher standards. We have to, and that starts with who we elect. Please vet your leaders. Vet your leaders. Look at who we have sitting there as president. That guy should be nowhere near office of the president, Mark.
Absolutely nowhere near. They got some folks have been messaging me to
Yeah.
ask whether this is a pre-recorded, this is a replay of something. This is Wayne Caesar show. Even though Miss Brenda Casey thinks that I'm trying to bully Wayne and take over Wayne's show. It is 22 minutes after 6 o'clock. Saturday, the 11th day of November, 2023. So it's a live show, guys. But Wayne, you are correct. And if this pleases Miss Brenda Casey, I agree with you, Wayne. I agree with you 100%. Who is the shadow minister that is responsible for, let us say, GPL? Why is it that we are not seeing an effort on the part of the coalition to address this issue of blackouts? We cannot accept what the PVP has been saying, that all these things happen. And like Jack Dave said, all of us are affected. No, all of us are not affected. Jack Dave is not affected by this. Irfan Ali is not affected by this. His immediate families and cronies are not affected by this. You know who are the people who are affected? The people in Albistown, majority of them. Majority of the people in Sophia, in Manripo, Port Maranta, Blackbush Polder, and other places are affected by this. In Buxton, in Belladrum, all over are affected by this. And guess who are the ones who have to pay the majority of fees to GPL? Again, it's the ordinary people. The ordinary people who, as a result of $3,000, they have their electricity light cut off for $3,000. And then you got to pay $4,000 or $5,000 to reconnect it. That is what's happening in the country right now. But the big businessmen, through the Private Sector Commission, and I want Sharwin Green to listen to this and others to listen to this keenly, right? And I agree with Sharwin. Occasionally, Patterson comes out, throws something out there. When he name call, praising him, he throws something out there. These guys got to be consistent. And now let me point you guys to something. Majority of the guys in the Private Sector Commission steal electricity. They do not pay their electricity bills. But the ordinary woman like Shondell, somebody named Shondell from, let's say, Sophia, or Waveney from Buxton, or Indira from Manripo, and so forth, they're the ones who have to rush to pay these bills. They are the ones who have to rush to pay their bills. But the big businessmen who thief electricity, who owe GPL millions upon millions of dollars, those fake meters that these businesses have, they rob the system. And on top of these big businessmen who thief electricity from GPL, you have a bunch of those in the management section of GPL are robbers as well. They thief the people's money. They hustle and steal millions upon millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And the ordinary rank and file people have to feel the squeeze. They have to carry the burden on their backs for the entire nation. Shame on those people at GPL, the management. Shame on the Air Finale install regime. And shame on those who in the opposition who should be taking a lead other than occasional press releases. They should be in front of GPL protesting. But when you call a protest, some of them too sweet, they're too nice. They probably don't finish up doing their hair and so forth. They cannot be seen. They cannot take little sunlight and so forth. So only a few people like the Rhonda Lane and a few others who show up to fight for the majority of Guyanese. I have been told by some of your ardent supporters that I talk more on your show and you don't get the opportunity to talk on Straight Up. It is true, it is a fact, and nobody in the audience can do anything about that, including Brenda and Shondell. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Miss Casey, a pleasant good evening to you, and to Miss Chandel Griffith, a pleasant good evening to you also. I know our viewers and listeners noticed that we went an hour and a half today, and the only reason this show has gone an hour and a half is because the boss man himself is on the show today. Hence the reason that we went an hour and a half. So we're looking at time mark. It's now 27 minutes after 6 here in Guyana, which would make it 27 minutes after 7. I mean, after 6 in the US, 27 minutes after 7 in Guyana. Mark, can you give us your closing remarks quickly and leave the Guyanese people with some hope and something positive to look forward to? I know that's not going to be easy to do after our public servants would have gotten an $18,000 bonus after taxes. Over to you,
Mr. Caesar, you're assuming that the show has come or is coming to an end. Let me remind you and the listeners that I was off last night. You had 1+ hours to speak without me being there. Oh, today you're not going to give me a chance to speak?
All right, so here what we're going to do, Mark. Let's do a poll. Listeners, viewers, please let me know if you would like the show to go an extra half an hour. I am game for it. I'm looking at your comments. It's your call.
We're going to sit here and look.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting, guys. Let me know if you guys want us to go another half an hour. Sharon Green says yes.
Sharon Green is a yes man.
Brenda Braithwaite, yes.
Okay, Brenda said
Charlene,
yes.
let's go. Yep. Chandel Griffith, go straight ahead. Okay, Mr. Benchop, overwhelmingly yes. The show continues, sir. All right. Is there anything else in the news that you want to talk about, or do you want to continue on the GPL topic? And while we are on the GPL topic, Mr. Benchop, may I please say to the mayor, Mr. Alfred Mentor, can you please make transparent the list of the businesses that owes City Hall money, because GPL is one of those, and I understand that they're owing close to $1 billion. Can we make these lists public so that the Guyana public can actually see what's going on here? We need to make these lists public. It's not a secret. You know, the everyday Guyanese have to pay their rates and taxes. If they don't pay it, they're in trouble. There's no reason that these businesses should be exempt. The PPPC government should be embarrassed and ashamed of themselves that GPL owes City Hall that amount of money. Over to you, Mr. Benchop. Anything else you would like to talk about in the second half an hour here?
Yeah, I think we should wrap things up now. a lot of your listeners are very inconsiderate. They know that I have a fresh cold and my voice. None of them felt sorry for me. Not a single one of them felt sorry to say, okay, Mark, we think you've had enough and go get some rest, nurture your voice and all these things. Every one of them, yes, yes. Sorry about that. Yes, yes. Um, so, and,
They
and
want to hear about Venezuela, by the way.
what else do they want to hear about Venezuela? They want to hear about Venezuela, fair enough. We can let them hear about Venezuela.
You could probably, on the maritime area, give Venezuela a channel out to the sea. So you make a slight concession in the maritime area.
Is there anything else? Because we have heard about that. We know what the PPP is about. And the Venezuelan issue will eventually die down in terms of the rhetoric coming from Maduro. That rhetoric coming from Maduro is to stir up sentiments on the ground in Venezuela in order to get votes because Maduro is on the verge of being kicked out of office. And so he's using that opportunity to whip up votes from the ordinary rank and file Venezuelans. And whilst doing that, he and Jagdeo may have had some sort of secret deal to help each other out. And so they are Jagdeo is encouraging Venezuelan nationals to cross over into Guyana in their thousands. Now we may know about 25,000. What about the other maybe 40 to 50,000 that got into Guyana unaccounted for, that are right now in Guyana? And the PPPC has realized, Jack Dale has realized that an opportunity for them to have these people registered, walk around with ID cards, and be prepared to vote in the next elections. That is a trick that Jack Dale is up to. GCOM is facilitating them with this, and the opposition is quiet. We have not heard anything concerning the large numbers of Venezuelan nationals who have already registered to become voters at GCOM. Mr. The three GCOM commissioners who are there to represent the interest of the opposition, Mr. Vincent Alexander, Mr. Charles Corbin, and Mr. Desmond Trotman, are quiet. We need to hear from them. We cannot wait and we cannot depend on Claudia Singh to speak on our behalf. She's already pro-PPP. She's in the pockets of the PPP. And whenever the PPP sneezes, she will have a tissue to wipe up and protect them. So the opposition, Mr. Aubrey Norton, and I want Sherwin Green and others to hear this. Mr. Aubrey Norton got elected as leader of the opposition with several things he promised: to fight for a clean voters list, to ensure that Claudette Singh is removed. Unfortunately, we are not seeing the energy for a clean voters list, neither are we seeing the energy for Claudette Singh to be removed, other than some occasional soundbites.
Well put, Mark. And I agree with you that there is something being worked out, you know, with Jagdio and Maduro. Because when I look at Venezuela, Mark, what would have occurred, you know, now in Venezuela that is causing this influx of Venezuelans into Guyana that would not have been present last year or the year before? The situation is basically the same on the ground in Venezuela. I was trying to figure out, well, what have changed that is making all these people rush into Guyana? And when I look, I have seen across the board in the last 3 years that it has really changed in Venezuela. So it's a real cause for concern, Mark. And I'm not even going to say 20 and probably 50 would have come across the border.
Yep, we've lost Wayne there for a quick second or so. His internet connection is very weak. It happens when you get the lowest of the internet connection. Sorry, Wayne, I was talking about your Verizon, the low
Yeah,
package.
yeah, yeah. It keeps. I don't know. Maybe because I'm in.
Wayne, it's okay, my friend. We just budget what we can afford, and since you get the lower of the Verizon package, it's okay, my friend.
At least it's a bit better than GPL, Mark. At
Thank you.
least it is better than
Absolutely.
GPL, sir.
Yeah.
You know?
Continue.
Yeah.
So the Venezuelan national, the opposition, we have there the shadow minister of the
Foreign
shadow
affairs.
minister of Home Affairs or National Security is silent on almost every matter. We do not see her out there fighting for our cause. That's Miss Geeta Chandan. Geeta Chandan was once the General Secretary of the People's National Congress Reform. I don't know what went through Aubrey Norton's head, but that's another story. We need to see these shadow ministers, whether it's shadow minister of Home Affairs, whether it's Geeta Chandan, whether it's the shadow minister of Health, Dr. Karen Cummings, that we hardly hear about, whether it's the shadow minister of Housing, they got to stick to their respective responsibilities and shadow in their areas. But a lot of them want to step out of the shadow, ignore what they're supposed to be doing, and gone and dealing with other people's issues.
Well, Mark, some people are stepping out of their shadow to even run for leadership. And I think the only person that, in my opinion, should be stepping out of the shadow to go and run for leadership, I would say, in my opinion, is Mr. Roysdale Ford. Because he's performing. He's executing what's in front of him. He's executing on behalf of the people. Mr.
You
Mr.
know,
Ford have done an excellent job.
Mr. Caesar, they still have some MPs who are working. If they're given the opportunity to do more, I think some of them, the hard workers, I think, and we know who some of them are, not just for the show, not just. I noticed Ganesh.
Danish,
Ganesh get
yes, Danish
Ganesh
is
get
one.
Ganesh get a little big now. He's a big boy now. He just wants to sit at press conferences and so forth. Ganesh is not as active as he used to be on the ground. Ganesh needs to go back. He needs to get off of his high horse, so to speak. Ganesh is my friend. I don't think I met him once, but friend in politics. This is nothing ill against Ganesh. I told him on several occasions, get off your high horse, go back into your constituency, go back into Region 3, walk from Parika all the way, to Distilling, all the way back at Distilling. Talk to the people, put on back your short jack, put on back your slippers, Ganesh, get back out on the ground. There are other MPs who are like that. Like, for example, Jormin Figueroa. Nice guy, don't get me wrong. People didn't elect Jormin Figueroa to work along with some NGO out in the US. I want people to listen to me carefully. I'm not against these NGOs and so forth. But every time Jormin is handing over something to some man when I get on shot, somebody when I get on shot, and these sort of things. Good job, Mr. MP. But your job as a member of parliament is not to do that. Don't get me wrong. It is not to do that. When last we see some of our MPs in Region 10, in Aituni, in Kokwani, in Old England, and those places. Every time we see them, is always something in Linden. I have nothing against Linden, and you guys know that. I have absolutely nothing against Linden. But Linden is not Region 10. Region 10 has over 25,000 registered voters. The last elections, I believe, it was about 14 or 13,000 or something like that. Come on, guys. You can do better. Don't get upset when we constructively criticize you guys. We don't hate you guys. We don't want your jobs. Region 6, the member of parliament for Region 6 has been missing in action. Pandit Dinesh Jaiprasad.
Finish.
Thing in action. It's like they don't exist. But you see them in parliament. Whenever they have parliament, they lash up parliament food and they're gone. I'm not saying they don't have food outside. That's just a little bit of humor. I know they have food outside. Pandit Jaiprasad, Dinesh Jaiprasad has about 2-3 jobs, except the members of parliament job. He got to focus on his job. Rice farmers have serious issues in Borbies. But I mean, I see Dinesh. I mean, I see these folks out there. They now represent the interest of the people. What about Bartica? Bartica doesn't have a representative. But when you talk, they vex. The bumps raise. They say Ben Sharp is a loose cannon. Ben Sharp this, Ben Sharp that. Is always personal. If it was personal, what explains me calling Ganesh Mahipal out to take off his shoes and his shirt and tie and get off his high horse and go back down on the ground with the people in Region 3 and work with them? Work. Don't just run in some store in Puerto Rico and take a picture. Walk. Go to Virgin Nugent. Go to the other areas there in his constituency. Walk with them. The other MPs, Dr. Karen Cummings, we don't see her. We don't hear nothing about her. People got issues, health problems. They got dengue, all manner of things. But whenever we see her, which is occasional because she has another job, and I'm here at this press conference and she disappears. Sorry about that, guys. Sorry. Over to you, Mr. Caesar.
Yeah, listen, Mark, we sometimes I think that we need to take a few steps back, where we have the real bona fide standalone politicians who is not, working a business on the side or have 2 other jobs on the side, because it's very, very, very difficult to put all those things together and to be able to execute, and in that case, you would not. And when it comes to being an MP and working for the people, the expectations is that you execute and execute flawlessly to the best of your ability, and it would be hard. I think Jermaine Ferguero said a couple of times, hey, I'm also a teacher, but you're also a teacher. You're working with NGOs. You probably have your little business on the side. Where does the whole MP thing fit in? We just can't be in this for money. You got to understand that this people's lives matters here. Children being able to go to school with something on their stomach, Mark, matters here. These guys don't even think about these things. They don't. And they need to start thinking about, they need to start though, Mark, thinking about these things.
They need, Mr. Caesar, they need, if I get Brenda's and Shonda's permission before I speak, because it seems as though they're getting on my case whenever I interrupt you. And they mean well too. Let's get back to Georgetown. You mentioned the mayor of Georgetown.
Yes.
The mayor of Georgetown is not going to fight your battle for you, the people of Georgetown. He doesn't have a track record of fighting your battle for you. And if you ask me, what one thing has he done thus far? This is not to knock Alfred Mentor, his worship, the mayor. It's not to knock him. But Alfred Mentor has more of a middle-class mentality, a middle-class approach to things. And so you're not going to see him in the gutter. You're not going to see him in the trenches with the people. Of course, majority of the people who are, I'm not saying that they're in the trenches or in the gutter, but I'm talking about the ordinary people. He's not going to be there for them. He is more of a middle-class individual. And this is not to knock middle-class individuals too, but he's not going to identify himself. And sometimes when we choose persons to represent our interests, we've got to be extra careful. Because when you choose any person to represent your interests and they don't, you have nobody else but yourselves to blame. Mr. Mentor needs to go out there and stand up for the people of Georgetown and represent them. Mr. Mentor, the mayor of Georgetown, needs to fight the PPP back. Jack Dale said that they're not doing anything. Irfan said that they're not doing anything. And Alfred Mentor is quiet about it. He's got to get the balls to knock these people back. Stand up and represent your constituency. Represent the people of Georgetown who voted for you. Don't take the impasse and the disrespect from Jack Dale and Irfan Ali, because they do not care about the people of Georgetown. Based on past history and the evidence, they do not care. They have been withholding subvention, hundreds of millions of dollars, starving the people of Georgetown. But yet Alfred Mentor, the mayor of Georgetown, sits quietly. When these PPP gangsters, these convicts in the PPP, go after him, he puts his tail under his leg and he remains quiet. Is that what we have as mayor of Georgetown? He hasn't called a press conference to deal with these issues or to counter these issues. We're not seeing much energy coming out of City Hall under the leadership of Mr. Alfred Mentor. Nothing at all. And if I have to give him a grade right now from a scale of 1 to 10, I will give him a 0.5. This is not personal. I know Alfred, but he can do better. The other thing, they're talking about amnesty for people with Georgetown. And the amnesty will benefit mostly those big PPP business people who owe rates and taxes to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Jack Dale got upset because Alfred Mentor met with some of them and discussing an amnesty. Jack Dale said that Alfred Mentor should not have met with those people. It should be transparent. But let me say this in Aubrey Norton's voice, without any fear of contradiction. Barrett Jack Dale, known as Susan, known as the butcher from Unity, has no moral authority to even mention the word transparency or democracy in his mouth. None whatsoever. But during the pandemic period, they, Jack Dale and Irfan Ali, gave concessions to the tune of hundreds of millions of Guyana dollars to only certain members of the private sector commission, only certain businessmen connected to the PPP concessions, and they left out others. They met with them and gave them concessions. So Jack Dale should really rest himself. He should really rest himself. Over to you, Mr. Caesar.
Well, Mark, that's consistent with the PPP, right? Nepotism at its best, right? They just take care of themselves, the inner circle, and then everybody who is aligned with them, right? Like critics who would have gotten the 863, I think, $1 million contract. That contract should really be up for questioning. You just take it.
Here's something. Don't think for a moment that that guy from the zoo got a contract for almost $1 billion. He is just the water boy. There's a man behind Critic. There's some people behind Critic that they're the ones who are putting up this money. Because remember, Critic the other day was selling a cigarette for $20, 2 cigarettes for $20 in front Freedom House and Rob Street and so forth.
Selling clothing amongst other things.
No, he wasn't selling. He was selling cigarette and fronto and these sort of things. He couldn't even buy his slippers. Now, in less than a year, 2 years, the question is, where Critic got that money from? Come on, let me do the math here. Where do you think? People are not stupid. People already know who is pushing Critic from behind. We already know. We're not dotish. If he's such a quote-unquote successful businessman, successful. Why is it every time he goes into the US Embassy for a visa, they keep denying him, denying him, denying him? Successful business people don't get denied just like that. There's a reason behind that. Over to you, sir. Over to you. Sorry about that. It looks like Wayne's Verizon stuck again. Let me see some of your comments. Look, we have a lot of things that we need to rectify before we get into these elections. Some of it that we might say might be painful, but we've got to be able to rectify these things. This is not about emotions in rushing and saying because somebody giving out 2 little hampers, they're ready to be leaders. They're not. In electing a leader, let us not allow emotions and some sort of vexation. You're vexed with this person because, and when you look at some of these people who have a candidate of their choice, nothing wrong with that, is the vindictiveness and the vexation and the personal. Sometimes you wonder, is this what politics has gotten to? A level of personal, something personal, that because you hate somebody because of personal views, you're going to choose any and anybody to run for president now. Any and anybody. Because you're Fanali's president now, so-called president, everybody can run for president now. And everybody wants to run for president now. Nobody wants to go in the trenches. Nobody wants to have saying or do cutlass work and these are the things. They want big boy work, big gal work. So they're gonna pretend as though they're high up there. Some of them don't even care about you, the ordinary people, that God forbid if they ever become leader of the PNC. Some of them, that is, and they know who they are, right? If they ever become leader of the PNC, or God forbid if they ever become president of Guyana, they're going to mush everybody because they wouldn't care about you. They will spit on you if they get that chance. All they want is power, and they will do and say anything. They're going to come, they're going to hug you, they're going to cry crocodile tears with you, they're going to give you a hamper or whatever they give you and pretend that they like you. No, all they want is power. Judge your next leader or leaders. Judge your next presidential candidate based on a track record of being there and caring for the people. Put aside emotions, put aside vexation, put aside personal views and all these things. People accuse me of being on the side of a man who betrayed y'all right now, Dr. Richard Van West Charles. Oh, they accuse me that I preferred Richard. That is farthest from the truth. But I don't want to get into that right now. But look what Richard did to you guys. He betrayed. I don't know what to say, but you don't want others to be like Richard, whether in the form of a female version of a Richard or whatever. Be careful with when you elect leaders. Do not elect leaders based on emotions. Do not elect leaders because your bumps raise and you don't like the other person. Look at their track record. Of course, you'd want their qualifications as well. They must have a track record. They must. We don't even know family values, whether some of them stand for family values. We don't even know whether some of them are religious or not. I'm not saying you got to be religious to be a leader. We don't know if some of them are atheists or not. We don't know anything. And we hardly see some of these people who are vying for leadership in a family role. Whatever has happened to the family, they're no longer there. Family values, other things, other than hampers and pampers, other than little crocodile tears. Sorry about that, guys. Sorry about that. Over to you, Mr. Caesar, and your Verizon.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you speak of family values, because when I look at the person I know you like me to use the word person.
But
That is what,
once you continue talking, I'll ask the operator to remove me for at least a minute or so
sure,
that we can get to talk. And I'll
sure,
get something to drink. Thank you, sir.
sure. When you speak of person, the person that is calling the shots right now in Guyana, it's quite concerning to see that that person is not a family oriented person. It's not a person that has a wife. It's not a person that has known children. At least I do not know that person to have children. It's concerning how can he have a perspective on what Guyanese families are dealing with. You know, we know that the government is transactional already in nature, but to see the person that is sitting there and calling the shots, and when I say the person, I'm not speaking of the installed President Irfanali. I'm not speaking of him because he doesn't call the shots. He's not his own man, and he needed to be his own man. And if he thinks that he's gonna sit around, you know, and be bossed around by that person who's sitting there and calling the shots, and then come 2025 gonna step up to tell people, oh, he's gonna be his own man. No, it's too late. You've already deceived the Guyanese people. You've hurt them enough. Your government has not done anything for Guyanese people. So out with this PPPC government, out with Jagdio. I have to call his name. His name has to be called. Out with Jagdio. You need to take your thumbs off of Guyana. You had your turn. We need to move forward as a country. And in order for us to move forward as a country, you and the PPPC regime has to go. And these guys should not be allowed to sit in power ever again in Guyana. Listen, this is my opinion. This is merely my opinion that the best way forward for Guyana is to always have a coalition government in place. We do not need a government like this current installed government, man. Barry Jagdeo is demonstrating absolute power. He's not engaging the opposition. There is no democracy in the PPPC. They're only willing to meet with the opposition when they see that they are challenged and they don't have a solution or strategy, aka the Venezuelan situation. They know that they had no strategy there. So therefore, they reached out to the experts who they know were on the side of the APNU plus ASC. And they took their pictures and all these things, and they're going to present it to the world like if we're on one accord. Hence the reason, Mark, that Irfan Ali could say to the delegates coming and say to the United States, hey, there is nothing going on in Guyana. Everything is fine. Because what do they present? Photographic evidence. That's all they present. But I am happy, Mark, that this fact-finding mission is going to be on the ground, and it is not, at office of the president having some high-level people speaking on behalf of our people, and not even on behalf, because they can be speaking on behalf of the people in Guyana who are living in poverty, because they're not saying the things that those people wants to be said. They are saying what they please to say in order, you know, to get the blessings of the US amongst the other large countries who were all involved in putting this government in place. This government needs to be removed. Mark, the time is now 1 minute to 7 here in the US, so it will be 1 minute to 8 in Guyana. Your closing remarks, sir. Can you please leave the Guyanese people with something positive? I know it is not going to be easy, especially after this $18,000 public servant increase. Bonus, not an increase. It's a bonus. It's a one-time thing. There's nothing that they have put in place long term. Everything is short term and minimal with the PPPC. Over to you, sir.
Well, you've asked me for my closing remarks. Before we get to my closing remarks, I want to see how much of our supporters, meaning our friends who are listening to us, because I don't get into the habit of fans. I have fans, I have friends, and those guys who watch and listen to us. And if you notice, one of the things, you don't see me as a public figure. I don't consider myself a public figure, just a friend of you guys. Wayne has asked me for my closing remarks. I want you guys to read my facial expression. Tell me what's going through my mind as he asked for my closing remarks as I take a sip of this Red Bull.
You're not ready to close yet. That's my take. If you want to go on, I'm game. I'm here. I don't have anything to do. So
If the people, let me see what the first person is going to pop up and say.
I think they want us to continue. I have no problem.
Well, we have to take it to a vote again. If they want to extend our
Yep.
time, it's just like an elections.
Come on, Sherwin. Sherwin, let's go. Do you want the time extended?
Sherwin and do all we
Miss Brenda, let's go. Tell me. Roxanne Haywood, she says to continue. Charlene says to continue. Shanette says to continue. Brenda said, let's go, Mark. Shondell Griffith, continue. Sherwin says, yes. He's the CEO. So if he says yes, we have to continue. MD John, yes. Emily Durant, you guys could go until 10. Wow. Anthony Armstrong, yes.
Okay. Well, having read all of those folks out there, and I appreciate it, my closing remarks, I would like to, I would say that something interesting popped up as in my closing remarks here tonight, because we have been on for a while. And something interesting I came a hold of. These representatives of the U.S. who are going to Guyana on an independent fact-finding mission. Something strange that has happened is that we can understand the corrupt PPP regime, yeah, but there are some members of parliament who have quietly made contact with these individuals, quietly demanding that they get to know who and who is behind it and what are they coming. And I was like, wow, are some of these members of parliament really acting on our interest, on our behalf?
I'm going with you.
That's the question. And
Mark, may I ask a question quickly here? Members of parliament on which side of the aisle?
on the side that's supposed to be our side, I'm sending this message out to them. Some of them know who they are. Get your act together, guys. Get your act together. These folks' visit is not about a one-man show. It's a group of individuals who have invited these individuals, who have spoken to them months now. The people have accepted the invitation to go to Guyana on this independent fact-finding mission. And whatever little small role that I can play, mind you, and whatever small role that I am playing, I will ensure, because it is a group, I will ensure that every individual, everyone who has a story to tell about discrimination, about persecution, about injustices, that you get that opportunity to talk your story. Nothing will be covered down. And I do hope that they also meet with certain members, family members of those who were victimized those who were slaughtered as a result of state-sponsored terrorism, and so forth. So this visit here by these folks, Mr. Caesar, it's a welcoming visit that should be taken, full advantages should be taken from this visit. It means a lot because they have taken time out from their busy schedule to travel down to Guyana to listen to the voices and the concerns of victims of racial discrimination, political discrimination, and persecution. It happens. It is happening live and direct in Guyana. So let them not be fooled. And I suspect that they are not fooled by the gimmicks and the political tricks by the PPP. Hence, they are going to be there in Guyana. And wherever they are, as long as it's going to be a public event, 107.1 FM will broadcast it live for all to see. And I just want to take the time out to thank everyone, those who have wished me well with my voice, and even those who haven't wished me well and wanted me to continue speaking, like the Brenda Casey and the MD John and all of you guys out there, you know yourselves. Because we're like a family here. We can take a little humor, a little punch at each other. This is not a program where people sulk up their faces and get vexed with each other. It's a family program. And so we appreciate the time that you guys take to be on here. And I am guilty as charged that I came on Wayne's program and took control of his show. Somebody may call him after the show and say, you see, I tell you, Ben Chab will take control of your show, Ben. You best come off the show, boy. Thank you for your time, Mr. Wayne Caesar. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, Mark. Thank you. You know, it was a pleasure, having you this evening. We had a pretty robust show, 2+ hours. And listen, Mark, it's interesting, and I'm happy to know that you're playing a role, with this visit, because I know that Guyanese are gonna get an opportunity, for their voices to be heard. And to the people, I say, prepare your presentations. If there's something specific that you want to say, prepare your presentations and be ready. And to our listeners and viewers, I encourage you guys to stay tuned, because as you would have heard Mark say, every opportunity we get to bring any visits in any of the communities live, we're going to be bringing them live to you, and you would be able to hear what the people have to say directly. Mark, this is a huge opportunity for the Guyanese people, and a very positive, this is a real positive for them. So
one thing else, Wayne, some elected officials from Brooklyn went to Guyana. Some of them thought or claimed that it was a fact-finding mission. And then when they came back, they whined and they dined while they were there with those corrupt people in government. They ate the king's meat and got sweet talk by Irfan and all of them. And they came back and all of them are quiet.
Quiet. Yes.
I hope that the visit by these individuals would not be the same as those who visited from Brooklyn. State Senator Roxanne Prasad and others, they're quiet. It is as though they just went there on a vacation. Compliments of the PPP regime, they're quiet, quiet, quiet. I am very, very, very mindful of those sort of individuals.
Mark, and I'm gonna even go there and mention a name, senior member of the House, Gregory Meeks. He was there. He came back. His silence is deafening.
When was he there?
Wasn't he recently down in Guyana? I thought
no,
he was not part of the team.
Not recently, no.
Not recently. Okay. But he's very tied into the PPPC.
He's PPP. He's PPP.
Right. And his silence is deafening.
And the difference with him, he is PPP. Mix is PPP. Hakeem Jeffries is pro people. There's a big difference there.
Yes,
He's
yes, yes,
pro
yes,
justice. He wants justice. He wants equal rights and justice for all. But
yes.
Mix is just a hustler. He's
Flat,
just into the hustle.
flat-footed, flat-footed. He's been that way for a very long time. But listen, we're gonna continue our fight. We're not gonna let someone like Gregory Meeks block us from doing what we have to do. We know what we have to do. The people on the ground in Guyana is who is gonna decide, where what direction the country goes in by the leaders that they choose to elect. And look, we're looking forward to 2025 again, to the opposition. Continue to work hard, and Mark would have said it. When you guys come, you guys need to come good and come on one accord. However it is you're going to work it out, Mr. Norton. Again, I call on you to get these senior voices in, like Lincoln Lewis and these guys, to come in and speak to your MPs. You guys come together. You guys put together a nice, robust plan, and you guys put something out there good for the people. The people of Guyana is right now struggling, and they are looking for leadership. They're looking to be empowered. They're looking to be guided. They're looking for leaders that they can trust. We have been in this corruption mark for a couple of decades now, and we need to step back before we can move forward. And when I say step back out of the corruption and try to move Guyana forward in the correct and in the righteous way. ExxonMobil, I'm still calling on you guys to put forth proper practices in Guyana. I know we're not that experienced in oil and gas, but that does not mean that we're out there to be taken advantage of. Please improve your practices. Mark, thank you again for coming on. It was a pleasure having you. To all our listeners and viewers, please enjoy the rest of your weekend. And again, as
Can
we
I
record,
say one more thing
yes,
before I go?
sure, Mark. Yes.
I thought
Go
you were
ahead.
going to say no.
No,
I thought you were going to say
no,
no.
I'm not gonna mess with you.
No. The MPs who think that they could just jump and turn on Facebook and just talk. People are tired of the talking. They know who they are. They're tired of the talking. People want actions. People want to see you guys in the communities, not for the photo ops, coming up with programs, all manner of programs to assist the people, to fight for the people, to fight for their interest. Whether you got to take a lockup now and then, that is part of the territory. Too many sweet boys and sweet girls are members of parliament. Some of them are missing in action. You don't even see them. I don't know, man. Sorry that I had to chime in with that final say.
No, Mark, you're correct. All the MPs have a job, to do, and they need to do that job. I don't know who really control the MPs, if it is the leader that controls them. And when you look at a guy like Devon Sears, Mr. Ramjatan, you need to get on top of that. You need to make sure that Mr. Devon Sears is active. Everyone has a boss. Everyone has someone to be accountable to.
Or Ramjatan and these guys themselves, they seem to be active occasionally on social media, on Facebook. You don't see them fighting. Yeah, when last you saw Ramjatan even stop by at GCOM to even buy a bottle of water for the people, just to show the solidarity with the people who are fighting for a clean voters list and these sort of things. It's like they're so absent from the concerns of the people. Cathy Hughes and all these people, where are they? Well, you see all of them rush to the United States of America because they believe that their problems can be solved by United States elected officials. The people on the ground are looking for those people back there who were elected and selected to stand up and represent their interests. They shouldn't be turning to some elected official that is in Washington. Oh, please help me. And then you have some of them dumbhead political neophytes who would jump on their platform to say, oh, lecture us over here, write to your elected officials over here, write it and call on your elected officials over here to deal with the problems back home. But when we call on those elected officials back in Guyana to do what the hell they're supposed to be doing, they get vexed. And then they jump in the car and they cry. I'm sick and I'm tired of them, Mr. Caesar. Enough is enough. The opposition is weak when it comes to confronting this weak and corrupt PPP regime. Had it not been for some of those fighters on social media that Irfan and Jack, they love to abuse and say that those same fighters, y'all know who those fighters are creating chaos. What would have happened with the opposition? That's just a question there, a rhetorical question. What would have happened to the opposition? But as soon as there's a function in the US, they dress up in the best dandan to come over. They're going to want to protest, whether it's Brooklyn or wherever, and walk. And they get all the mouth loud, loud, loud. Oh, yes, and this, and that, and this, and that. Oh my gosh. And they take picture, selfie. They do this, they do that. They're very active. But as soon as they return to Guyana, you can't find them. You don't know where they are. I'm gone.
No, Mark, you're 100% correct on that. People come up to the United States, everybody wine and dine, and they have a good time and everything. And then when they get back to Guyana, their silence is deafening. There's nothing in it for the Guyanese people. Their taxpayers' money would have been used, for these MPs to fly out to the States among other places. We need to stop these type of behaviors. And listen, you have a job, is either you're going to own in on it or you pass it on to someone else. Trust me, there's a lot of capable folks on the ground in Guyana who can execute the job as an MP flawlessly. So these MPs that are sitting there, should take this as a great privilege that they have been given to serve the people and have that appetite to serve the people and understand that they're not their own bosses. The people are actually their boss because they would have been elected by the people and placed there. So we need to get all right. You seem to have something else, sir. Go ahead.
The next time some of those lazy MPs in the opposition come over to the US, I will personally protest them. That's all I wish to. The next time they come over here and talk up and waste people time and fool up people with nonsense, and then when they head back to Guyana, they're quiet, they do nothing, I'm going to protest them right in the US. I will protest them. Thanks. I'm out. I'm gone.
And for the leader of the opposition, Mr. Aubrey Norton, if you find that, you're trying to reach out to certain MPs and they're ignoring you, I don't even think you should even continue to keep it as an internal matter. You should make certain things public so that the people can see where they're not being represented. Because if you know as a leader, Mr. Norton, that you're representing the people and you see that MPs are not coming along with you, and you're not doing anything wrong, but they're still not coming along with you, you need to make it public knowledge so that the people know that they need to have that person removed. And I don't know if Mr. Norton can send a request to Mr. Granger to have someone taken off the list or someone recalled from Parliament. But if there's a way that he can do that, he needs to exercise that and have certain people recall if they're not executing their duties. You're not there to waste time. You're there to serve the people, and you need to execute your mandate and serve the people of Guyana. On that note, to all the listeners and viewers, I first want to thank you for allowing us to come into your home this awesome Saturday evening. And as you do whatever you have to do in your homes, you're watching TV, whatever it is, I hope that you guys are going to enjoy the rest of your weekend. For those who are out and are going to be traversing the highways and byways, I ask you to drive carefully. And I look forward to seeing you in the week next week on Straight Up. Until then, everyone, enjoy, and I'll see you around.
Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your presence so. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your presence so. From out the 14 and into 15, I make a presence so. From out the 14 and into 15, I make a presence so. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your presence so. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your presence so. I make money down and a man hold me hand and I make a presence so. I make money down and a man hold me hand and I make a presence so. Stupid Gary, let's shame mommy, go marry, go one gold ring, stupid gold ring, stupid lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your presence so. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your presence so. This make a present, I make a present, this make a